ma'am,
Mm.
Kavita ma'am, you have to just click on record option.
Yeah,
So she will.
Kavita is recording.
thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
And please, I request all of you to mute. Now we are going to start. Sorry for little delay. Welcome, Sumitra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be sharing. Okay. Let me go to. Okay. The talk is going to be an overview of a series of participatory projects in a Black Thai community here in Thailand. Okay. So this is the organization of my talk. So I will start by talking a little bit about language revitalization and language reclamation. And I actually watched Peter's lecture last time. So he actually, his lecture was actually very insightful and very informative. And then today I'll be talking particularly about revitalization. And after that, I'll be giving a brief explanation on participatory action research or PAR approach. And I will move on to defining words like participation and talk about the degree of participation, which I adopt UNICEF's framework. And then I'll be talking about the background of the causes of intra and intergenerational shift in Thailand. And after that, I'll be talking about all the participatory projects taking place in Thailand, and then followed by a conclusion. Okay, now language revitalization. I actually added this from Peter's slide, PowerPoint. So it's revitalization is our efforts to increase language vitality by taking action to increase the domains of use as well as the number of speakers. And Leonard, he's a language reclamation person. And then he said that revitalization is the process focused on language itself, where actually the goals and measures of a given effort was pretty much about the variables such as the number of speakers, and the ultimate goal of revitalization is basically creating speakers who master linguistic units like words and grammatical rules, and of course intergenerational transmission. And recently there, a more recent one, a more recent term, language reclamation by Leonard. He defines it as a larger effort by a community to claim its right to speak a language and to set associated goals in response to community needs and perspectives. So basically, this is more like community-driven kind of revitalization, if I can say that. And so from his perspective, language is never independent from the environment in which its speakers lives. And so language must be produced in a way that integrates non-linguistic factors. And okay, there will be more sort of like critiques on language revitalization. And people also see this as some sort of like decolonization from a lot of things, including linguists working in the field. So they were saying that in the colonial structure or colonial time, so we define good speakers are those whose legitimacy is determined by the researcher. And so good speakers are people who produce this so-called like good language or perfect one, and then it will be transformed into data. Okay. I'm sorry, this is a bit distracting that I have to keep, okay, clicking on the app meeting. Okay, yeah. So basically, so in short, reclamation is a term that is used when it's like, when this effort is community driven. Okay, so Leonard himself argues for a paradigm of language reclamation, which moves beyond a focus on direct language measures such as creating new speakers, or to incorporate community epistemology such as how language is defined and given sociocultural meaning. So the focus on reclamation kind of shift more on to the community needs and research approaches. Respect local notions of language, worldviews, and histories that inform community needs. But for myself, will be using the term revitalization, because I think it's still revitalization. It's still increasing the language vitality to a language. It's just different approaches. Okay, so that's language revitalization versus reclamation. And now moving on to participatory action research. So it's a kind of action research that is conducted for, with, and by the language speaking community themselves. So basically you involve or engage local people in every step of the research steps. And it is being said that this method is self-reliant. Basically, you can foster or cultivate or foster a local researcher through the whole process. So it seems to be a promising kind of methodology, if you say so, to have a local researcher working with you in the field instead of you working as a researcher by yourself. So this diagram would give you a better picture of how things work. If you look at the diagram, this is on the left with the arrow. You can see that all the steps from entry, look, plan, act, observe, reflect, and evaluate and react is actually all the jobs that we have to do as a researcher. Okay, but with this participatory or PAR approach, you do this with your local researchers, so community people. So basically you talk about everything, and local people will be trained. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, local people will be trained along the process. Okay, so first, this is what we do when you entry. So you start with networking, and when you look, you can do SWOT analysis, which is you identify strength, weakness, opportunities, and then threat. When during the planning step, it's basically talking about what we want to do. So you consult the community what they want to do, and plan everything with them basically. And then when you have the plan, then you implement it. And after you implement it, you evaluate and make an assessment together, and then you start planning again with the findings or reflections that you have. Okay. And the PAR project is usually a team project, because it is usually interdisciplinary in nature, meaning that you are working with people from different fields. Because actually when you work with community, that interest is not necessarily only about language, but their ways of life and everything. From my point of view, it's actually a good approach, because it reflects how language actually works and how linguistic study fits into this humanity and social sciences as a whole. So it's not just linguistic, but you talk about like museum study or music study, and also like business management and everything that is it's about people's life. Yeah. And it addresses especially the relationship between language and culture, as we all know when we take that sociolinguistic class, and we talk about how language and culture are intertwined, that you cannot really separate it. So from my experience working with from this approach, we find out that actually people in cultural studies also have concern about losing their cultures. So it's actually better to work in collaboration. So we can say that you cannot save a language without saving the culture, and also you couldn't save the culture without saving the language. So why not working together? Okay. And of people, I look at the UNICEF Convention of Rights of the Child. So this is the sort of environment that we have to create. Okay, so the participation has to be very safe. In the environment has to be very safe. No discrimination on any grounds, or marginalized or socially excluded or disabled. So it has to be very inclusive, and the kids have the youth. All the kids, young people would have the freedom of expression, association, or religion, and the right to information and the right to express views and have them given due, so they can express in whatever languages or whatever media that they feel comfortable with. Okay, and the participation have to be meaningful, and by meaningful participation, it's a little bit like a repetition of what was said in the earlier diagram. So we have voice, which means the expression of views must be facilitated freely in a medium of choice, and the audience of the opinions of the younger people. So their view must be listened to, and it has to be the right audience. The influence space, let's go to space. So it has to be safe, as I said earlier, and inclusive opportunity to form and express views. And lastly, influence means that their view must be acted on as a program. It doesn't mean that whatever their opinion is will be translated into actions, but you have to respond because you have to respect their opinions. So this is basically the framework that I use. And this is the map of Thailand, and people I work with live in this province here. It's called Phetchaburi, and they live in this blue area here, which is Khao Yoi. Okay, so I use the diagram to show background information about the ethnic group I've been working with for the last 10 years. So basically originally they're from They're from Dien Bien Phu, some in Vietnam, and they entered Thailand as captives of war. So basically, they are captives of wars, and so they became like slaves. And there are other migration after that. But anyway, so most of them came in as the captives of wars or slave, and in that particular province, Phetchaburi province, which is situated in the western part of Bangkok. It's about 2 hours from Bangkok, and from the survey, there are 5 ethnic groups besides True Thai and Chinese Thai in the province, and which we didn't. Okay, and so we have Karen, and this diagram here, this says there are 3 Lao related. So we have Lao Puan, Lao Vieng, and Black Thai is actually one of the Lao, which is Lao Song. That's another name for them. And among the Lao groups, Lao related ethnic groups, Black Thai is seen as, has the lowest status among the Lao related groups in the province. And you can see that at the end of this arrow, somehow, this is about the outward mobility of the group itself. The researchers working with ethnic people refer to the Black Thai as the strongest and the most vibrant ethnic group in the province. So we'll be talking about how they can move from, say, the lowest in the tier to the almost like, say, the topmost in the tier in terms of social status. Okay, so when they enter as captives of wars and then became slaves and things like that, so we have reports on stigma, discrimination, abuse, and rape. Okay. And that resulted in like bad well-being, low self-esteem, and negative attitudes. And people call themselves Lao. I mean, people call this group, refer to this group as Lao or Thai or Thai. But they refer to themselves as Thai or Thai Song Dam. They don't refer to themselves as Lao because Lao has this negative connotation of something bad. For example, in those days, like in the old days, when you want to when you want to look down on someone, you can say something like, you are so loud, something like that. So they actually didn't like the term, and then they don't like it when other people refer to them as loud, but among themselves, they talk to each other and they say among themselves, they said that they are loud. They just don't like other people to call them that. And the green thing there, that we have the emergence of localism trend in Thailand, which is actually a changing point, which I will be talking about it later on. So after the emergence of localism, so basically the promotion of local identities. So the past decade, the Black Thai group has a better well-being. They have better, good self-esteem, and they have positive attitudes in multicultural contexts, and actually contents of their ethnic language and culture actually made it to local curricula. And these today, they can proudly call themselves loud, and then they say we are loud out loud at the moment. At present, not like in the old days. And okay, now I'm done with giving all the background, so I'll be talking about my project. So this is all the projects that I have done with the Black Thai community, the same community, for the last like almost 10 years. It started here. In order to understand this diagram, please pay attention to the degrees of participation on the right. So we have the rate words here saying non-participation. So basically from this is like a ladder. So from round 1 to 3, it's non-participation, and for 4 to 8, it's a degree of participation. It's actually the ladder of youth participation developed by HEART in 1992, UNICEF, and you can see here that the non-participation started from manipulation, which is basically adult initiated, and younger people joined without even knowing the objective of the meeting or whatever activities that they join in. And the degree of participation, the topmost that we are expecting, is actually youth initiated and share decisions with adults as equal partners. Okay. So, and this is just to give a more details on how the ladder works. So you can see round 1 again is adult-led activities in which youth do as directed without understanding the purpose of the activities, and decoration adult-led activities. So it's basically the degree of participation. And okay. And this particular model here, ladder of youth participation, has been used as an evaluation or as a framework to evaluate participation of young people. And UNICEF revised it, and so this is actually, it's become like most of participation, which is actually still very similar to the original model of participation. It started from no participation or unethical participation. So basically, UNICEF is working with adolescents, so they use the term adolescents. I use young people because that covers the age of the younger people that I work with. So it starts from here that adolescents or young people have little or no opportunity to express their views, and the goal is also the adolescent-led or young people-led participation. So the same thing, which is youth-initiated kind of activities, and adults serve as facilitators rather than leaders. And so the whole process is controlled by the young people themselves. But I prefer the latter because you can see how things work and how the participation kind of step up into the higher ladder. Okay, so again, this has been like my 10-year work. I am a sociolinguist, so I entered the field site working on typical sociolinguistic project, which is pretty much language attitudes, and also investigate on the revival movement, whether it's community driven or whether it's policy driven kind of thing. And around here, it's when I started working on. So the upper part of the ladder is all participatory action research initiated by mostly younger people. Okay. And okay, so from years like the first few years working with, I didn't only work with black tie. I work with many. Our institute in Mahidol University, we work with all the ethnic groups in Thailand. And what we can see as a pattern is like whenever you do language attitudes kind of research, you always find positive attitudes, but somehow despite the positive attitudes, we have low literacy. And another thing, which is our main point of concern, is usually revitalization efforts are mainly organized by older people. By the elderly. And so if you ever see younger generations taking part in the whatever activity that is going, it's pretty passive. So they usually join as a performer or just a helper or just a volunteer, or maybe they're not volunteering, but they're basically made to come to the activity. And that leads us to a bigger problem, which is it kind of hit us that several communities here have no successors for their heritage. Okay. And so we start asking this kind of questions. So for example, like how can language revitalization and reclamation address the root causes of language shift? And most importantly, how do we involve or engage young people? How do we make them interested in traditional language and culture? Because usually they are not. So, I mean, to be honest, right? And another question is, to what extent cultural preservation and reconstruction is compatible with adapting to new social environments, and how this impacts language development as well as strategies for revitalization. Okay, so that's like the problem. And now I'm going to give you the background of the black Thai people, because it's useful to know the causes of shift in Thailand, both in intra and intergenerational language shift. So here are the causes. We have something about education plan and language learning myth and hierarchical society, which is the nature of the society, and also the role of the mass media. So let me first talk about the education plan. So in Thailand, the language of instruction at all levels of education is Standard Thai. And so this selection of Standard Thai as a language of instruction actually dated back to the era of King Vachirawut, which is about like 1910 or 1924 back then, who he established principles for a compulsory education plan, basically discouraging all other languages but Thai as the language of instruction in order to decrease any threats by nationalistic immigrants of Chinese descent in Thailand, and also to reinforce the hegemonic nationalist ideology of the Thai state at that time. So basically, being Thai at that time, and also a little bit nowadays, means being required being educated in the Thai language, and the use of other languages in class was prohibited like totally in the late 1930s, and then you'll be punished for speaking your language. And I think it's not just happening in China, it's happening in a lot of places around the same time. Also the myth. So there was this myth. It was a misconception that people believe that if you teach your children too many languages, they will not learn any, and then they will have language development problems. So it's better to just learn one language. And this one shows the hierarchical society of Thailand. So this diagram here, we have English as the most prestigious language in the Thai context. And we have national language, which is Standard Thai. And then we have regional languages, which is the Northern dialect, the Northeast dialect, and the Southern dialect. And sub-regional languages include everything, including all the marginalized ethnic languages. Okay, according to, this is from Smalley 1994, the ethnic minority peoples are placed at the lower end of the social hierarchy. So basically at the end here, and belonging to the lower end of the hierarchy means stigma and discrimination. The ethnic minority community has to face socially, ideologically, and also linguistically. It also means stigma and discrimination. It's also predictable that speakers of a lower tier would be interested in learning a language of the higher tier, or may be interested to learn a language of the same tier, but they wouldn't be interested in learning a language on the lower tier. Okay. And this is more information on the context. So to this day, and that was Hayami 2006, but this is 2019. Still, it's the same thing, which is Thailand is the only country that hasn't recognized, the diversity numerically. And so the Graham Kazonen said that we have about roughly like 75 languages in Thailand. And again, so in the Phetchaburi, which is the province I work with, we have 5 ethnic groups. Besides, we are not talking about True Thai, Regional Thai, or Chinese Thai. Okay. Okay, now the next factor is the mass media. So the exposure to academic institutions and as well as the mass media is also a major factor that make the local people seeing themselves as old-fashioned or uncivilized, because that's how they are projected through drama or news, like there are problems and things like that. So they ignore valuable knowledge and wisdom of former days because they think it's old-fashioned and it's uncivilized, and ethnic people are related to something very backward. And okay, so that are the causes of shift in intragenerational shift and intergenerational shift in Thailand. And if you remember the diagram where I put the entrance of the Black Thai people as the captives of war, and then they were placed at the bottommost of the Lao-related ethnic groups, and then there is this localism, right? So which is the emergence of localism trend in Thailand. Okay, so in 1961, the Thailand started the first national development. So basically, I'm going to be very briefly about this because it's all of you just need to know what it means by emergence of localism. So Thailand went through the same thing every country on the east side of the world experience, which is like industrialization. And in the late 1990s, we have that economic bubble burst, right? So a lot of financial companies and corporates just went bankrupted, and it's time that academics and economists were saying something like, we are going into the wrong direction, so why not just come back and see what we have here in our own community. And that is the emergence of localism in Thailand, which is basically asking everybody to go back and look at the root, what kind of knowledge they have. And since then, rural localism is a promising alternative. So, and that is when if there are different policies by different ministries, including Ministry of Education, addressing localism in education, and also business plan for the whole country in terms of how it affects education. We have educational reform in Thailand, and it's the first time that we have a more place-based curriculum, which means that schools can have certain number of hours to include, say, local knowledge or local content of their heritage, be it language or culture. But I mean, they have the choice. Each school have the choice to do whatever they want. So some schools would choose to do language education, like local language education, or some school wouldn't. So it depends. But that is a big change when we have the place-based curriculum. Okay. So it's time to find a way back to being traditional and also being prosperous. So traditional communities then become a holistic learning units where direct learning and teaching is simply the natural way of life, and self-sufficiency must come from within the community and from within its own traditions. So that is all about the history, and also in terms of what is happening in the society is the emergence of localism with all the policy and everything that is a point of change where localism becomes a trend that yields support to the expression of local identity. And so I started my first participatory research in 2012, and it's a 3-year project. It's language and culture, a guarantee of well-being for, yeah. And the main target is young people. So this is how UNICEF define young people. I actually kept changing the term because things change. And so I use young people because it's the children from age 10 to 25, right? And UNICEF work with adolescents, which is 10 to 20. Okay. And why young people? It's because young people is the future. I keep saying the same thing in all the presentation, because you need young people to get involved in the revitalization efforts because they are the future. And with the freelance approach to youth participation, we see young people as beneficiaries and also partners and also leaders. So basically the main stakeholders, but we position them as beneficiaries, partners, and also leaders, meaning that we'll be working together. And World Bank Development said that instead of looking at elderly, they also mention elderly people and also children as a problem, because a lot of in the culture of many countries, we see children as a problem because they are too young to know anything. But from the literature review, it's been confirmed that actually working with younger people can foster leaders of change, or change agent. And they, if they are given opportunity and the right training, they will grow to be a very good leader, and they can help with community development. Okay, so the objectives of basically all the revitalization projects that I have is to reinforce the use of ethnic and culture for conserving the heritage, strengthen local community networks. So we have to work with different stakeholders, and most importantly, engage young people in the process of language and cultural revitalization. Okay, so this is, I was saying that this is the first project I work with. Okay, so the first year that the first year of our participatory research was we network with the community and we talked to them about the heritage. And we said that we were talking to them openly about how we would like to have a younger generations to get involved and engaged in the effort. And then so we work with the elderly people that we used to work with before we started the participatory research, but we recruit younger people there too. And the committee chose the local heritage that they wanted to work with. And this black tie committee happened to choose the local museum because they think it's everything. I mean, it represents everything. There's everything in the museum. It's the ways of life from birth to death, everything about their traditions, their beliefs. Okay, and on the second year, we expand. So basically, we are talking about having this learning unit in the community. And the first year it was just one unit, which is the museum. And the second year we expanded to the wider communities to make it inclusive and also to build a sense of ownership among all. And the third, we add commercial value to value. And the way we work in this project, which is I'm going to be talking a little bit about this project because it's actually the beginning of everything that makes our project successful this long. Okay, so when we engage, when we work with the younger people, what we do is we actually ask them to choose the kind of heritage they are interested in, not necessarily language per se, but they could choose anything about their culture. So they could choose how to cook, how to weave, how to do basketry, how to do embroidery and that kind of thing. So our slogan for working with kids is do what you love and love what you do. So we don't force them into doing anything, and we hosted like we held a youth camp. And what we did was we asked the kids to choose the group that they wanted. So basically they created their own group, and then what they had to do was we asked them, our assignment then was to create a cultural map. So we have different kind of heritage, language and cultural heritage. And everybody had to go out and do a little research of what kind of information or what kind of heritage of their choice is about. So they have to go out on foot and walk to different houses of the elderly people and elicit the data by themselves. And by doing that, they have to communicate in the local language, which is the Black Thai, with the elderly people, because some of the elderly people, they are not very fluent in speaking standard Thai. Yeah, so that's how we do things. And when we talked about participatory action research, this is you get to talk to the community people, especially younger people, because they are the focus and they get to choose what they want to do. Okay. So it's here, it's already, the project itself is child initiated because they got to choose, and directed by adults because we told them what to do. Basically, that you have to go out and collect, elicit the data, and then come back and then work in group and then do a presentation and then draw a cultural map. So the output of the project on the first project was the restoration of lost community ties. So this is also what's happening in also other communities in worldwide, where the younger generations are not talking to the older generations anymore because they are not, I mean, the older generations are not seen as, say, a source of knowledge or anything cool for younger generations. But once you created this time and space or activity for them to communicate, you basically restore whatever is lost, you know. And so we also have better well-being for elderly and young people. In terms of elderly, they have better well-being because once again, they felt that they are valuable again, instead of, you know, just being old and then just sitting there, not having nobody to talk to. Yeah. And young people feel proud of themselves because they get to learn the value and the stories about their own roots. And what we have from the first participatory project, it's a group of youth leaders, okay, which are still the youth leaders that we work closely with until now. And we have younger people. So before the project, you can, the first few years when I had to conduct that project on investigating the language rights and cultural rights, I was actually very worried about how I'm going to elicit the data with younger people, because according to the Human Subject Committee, you know, it's not good to ask kids, you know, what kind of stuff they suffered, but the discrimination and the prejudice was so obvious that I actually didn't have to elicit by just saying, oh, can you tell me about what it's like to be Black Thai? First, it's like a pattern. Everybody would say something like, oh, it's good, we get to dance, we get to wear this costume. And then after that, they will be talking about how they were being discriminated and how they were being teased by their peers at school, or when they have the, say, scout camp, how, kids from other school were teasing them and saying like, you were, yeah, lao, something like that. Anyway, with 3 years working with us, they have better pride and confidence, but still they cannot read and write, because what we have was that they can communicate, and then they started speaking the black Thai again so basically this is to increase the domain of use in the community. And okay, that was, let me see, 2012 to 2015, and in 2017, 18, and 19, and actually until now, we have the youth-led project, which is actually at the topmost of the ladder of participation, if you remember the diagram. So the youth leaders that I said that we have the youth leaders as a, say, products of the first project. They actually wrote a proposal and applied for a grant by themselves. And yeah, the project that they proposed was how to read and write Black Thai script. Yeah. Okay. And the project went on to another project, which is the Black Thai folktales. So basically the collection of folktales, and they designed their data collection by themselves, actually adopting what we did before. So they sent kids out, younger kids out to different houses and elicit the stories from older people, and came back, and then I will be showing the pictures later, drawing pictures, and then write the stories in Black Thai and also Thai. And 2019 to 2020, which is now, it continues on to an ebook, and which we are working on right now. So we are working with a trilingual ebook, which is Black Thai, Thai, and English, and we get to do trainings on the language, both in Black Thai and also English. Okay, and this is another project. So you will see actually there are projects that overlapped, because there are projects initiated by the kids and applying for the grant by the youth leader themselves. And there are this kind of project, which is linguistic and cultural revitalization through the lens of young locals, initiated by the kids, but applied for the grant by me. Yeah, but so this is how things work. Before I apply for any grant, research grant, I talk to the community first, what they wanted to do. And I try to fit linguistic in. And since this is a digital era, 2018, just a few years ago, and it's like just a time that everybody goes out and check in and then take photos and posted it on, social media. And so that's what they wanted to do. So what we talked, and how we are going to incorporate like linguistic kind of work into that kind of interest or needs, is to do this with learning how to type in Black Thai font, which is going very well. It's actually better than the how to read and write Black Thai script that they did by themselves back then, because it's because of the teaching methodology that they chose. So back then what they did was they invited an elderly wise person to come in and then teach the kids, and it wasn't activity based. So certain kids were pretty bored, but the youth leader themselves learned a lot because they are already motivated, so they wanted to learn. But of course, we also want to recruit more and more young people to be in the group so that we are stronger and stronger. So anyway, so in this project, what we did was we learned how to take beautiful photos, how to do editing, and how to do documentary, just basic things, not like professional. But most importantly, we learned how to type. And so, and at the end of the project, we created a Facebook fan page under the name Paikalau Malay, which is their language, meaning where are you going, which is the greeting for the black Thai people. And we get to, in our posts, the first post that we had was how to download the font. And because if you don't have the font, you won't be able to read whatever the black Thai content on the page. Okay, and so this is basically I just do the screenshot of the page. We would have, oh, okay, sorry, that one, it was the, okay, we can look it here. We can look here. We would have the black Thai. As you know, they're speaking it, but they don't know how to read and they don't know how to write. So when we started, it was just like a one word thing. So they started with one word, and then what is typed in Thai here is a little information about whatever picture. Usually it's always the ways of life in the black Thai community, and then they will give information sharing their heritage. Okay. Yeah, so, and sometimes we do English, but that English is actually my contribution. But right now they're trying to learn it by themselves. And the later posts we have from just one word, two words, or phrases. We have sentence, which this one basically means a young girl is wearing a colorful wrap here. So that's the project, one of the projects that we did. And so these are the pictures of the folktale projects. So what they did was, yeah, as I said earlier, elicit stories from elderly people. They get to draw, paint, and write. It's basically like, working on big books, small books that some people did, for revitalization. The difference was they wanted to do it by themselves. I didn't tell them to do the books. They did it by themselves. So it was youth initiated. It's from their interest. And so we don't have a problem with motivation or, asking kids to do it, because they actually want to do it by themselves. And so they collected the stories, and we still have maintain the relationship between the younger generation and the older generations. So they get to check the drawing, whether it's the right representative, and also the language, whether it's spelled the correct way, because there was a problem because since actually most of the people don't really know how to read and write, even the elderly people. I mean, they're just losing their language. There's only a few people who are community experts, so they have to get it checked. And younger generations, they get confused between the Thai spelling or the Thai, actually syntactic structure and the black Thai. So they had to go to the elderly people, experts on black Thai language, and then do the consultation whether it's correct or incorrect. And also we have, which what we carried on and do in our present project. This picture was taken 2 weeks ago. Continue on to the ebook project that we work with also a university professor whose specialty is on, well, he's an anthropologist, but his main interest was actually the black Thai, because he did the anthropological stuff with the black Thai people in Vietnam. And so this is the project that we created, the trilingual, we are creating the trilingual ebook, and it's youth initiated, and adults like me and other people are just offering help and trainings when necessary. Okay. And the project that we are hoping to do, and we started a little bit, but not really starting yet. We are hoping to work with actually my colleague who is here too, Professor Julius Labang, that we are planning on doing this startup project, because when we are talking about language shift, or language death, or revitalization, we have to think about the cause of the shift itself. So we talk about socio-economic kind of factors that kind of drive the language into this attrition. And these younger people, And also one more information about the nature of Thai rural area is, since a lot of there are not many kind of jobs in the community in the rural area, so everybody just try to go to school or send their kids to school. Once they finish their school, they have to go to town and find a job. But the thing is, when the parents' generation, which is like the middle-aged generation, they wanted to find a job, they would have to go to town, and then they got married, and then they have kids. If they couldn't take care of their kids because of the high cost of living, they would send their kids back home, and they would ask the grandparents to take care of the kids. So that's how most of our young people grow up. And since they get engaged in this kind of, in our revitalization project, they are really attached to the older generation, elderly generations. And once now we have people who graduated with a university degree, they want to create jobs back in the community so that they can stay in the community and take care of the elderly people. Because otherwise we have a lot of social problems where elderly people are just abandoned or left behind because people have to go to town. And that's why the startup projects. And yeah, so we are with this project, we plan that we have to work with a lot of, and I said participatory project is always interdisciplinary, and we have to respond to community needs, not necessarily language, but language plays a big part in it. As you can see that these are just some of the products that we sort of, created. And we try to add, these linguistic elements onto the products and try to create something more practical, because all the costumes, a traditional costume, or a lot of things just didn't really work. It's not practical or functional anymore. Yeah, so I come to the last part of my talk. Okay, so the primary focus of my talk is on the engagement of younger generations in the language and cultural reclamation of activities. And the main points that I want to make are that the young people engagement is crucial to sustainability of the efforts, and engaging younger people in community work and basically participatory action research. When you involve these kids in every step of the how to do research, you have a local researcher. And it doesn't only help to promote ownership and resilience of the interventions, but also strengthens younger people's positive attributes and skills, also enhancing their leadership abilities. So because they have to work in teams, so we have, say, the same goals, and we have to think about the tasks or assignments or activities that we have to do in order to accomplish our goals. And also engaging younger people in revitalization activities, create time and space. This is when I talk about restore, weaken, and lost, or even lost community ties between generations. And let me quote Romain, who proposes that for language maintenance and revitalization to be sustainable, they need to be related to wider socio-economic factors. So I took it as doing a revitalization, perhaps you have to think about it in terms of not just language itself, but actually the lives of the real people who are faced with the difficulties and hardship in their community. And that's maybe the start of how you can work and design your revitalization project. Okay. And that's just different quotations of different people, like reclamation is necessarily a community undertaking, and language will only remain alive if it's used by a community. And I use it as the title of my talk, which we talked about. I mean, Professor Julia Salabank, we talked about how we are going to be talking about this, and we are hoping that we can write an article about it, and we use the term vernacular normalisation to, creating time and space for this activities among generations and their spoken language to take place naturally. Okay. And in conclusion, as you can see that the approach that I took, it's basically, it's can be seen as this kind of effort can be seen as the need to create or continually reproduce dignity and pride rather than a wish to return to the past. And this is also talking about whether you need a top-down approach or bottom-up approach. So personally, actually, there should be both. But because without supportive governmental policies, sustainable language and cultural revitalization movements may arise and succeed through the force of community goodwill. But without the community participation and willingness, it's just not going to happen. And that is the last bullet on my slide, which is revitalization project that fosters relationships among community members and relevant stakeholders and also linguists, can be seen as a recreation of speaker community, providing spaces and times for the language to live again, and relationship between members of the community that are built and maintained through language. Okay, so that's the end of my talk. If you have any questions or comments.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you, Sumittra.
Okay. Yes, so that's
the questions
I'm
are
doing good with time.
they have written their questions on the chat. Do you want me to read them, or you can read them yourself, or they are asked questions? Do you want me?
Could you please?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So there's a. I will start from Peter's question.
Right.
Can you say something about the role of gender, both among the young people and among the researchers? The activities you mentioned, like cooking, weaving, embroidery, seem to be female-centric. Are there issues about male young people? Given macho, mainstream, Thai culture, and role models for boys and youths? Yes.
Right. Okay. Yes, so that is a very good question. Most of the people we work with, in fact, elderly generations and younger people generation are mostly female. We have a few male. And talking about younger generations, most of them are female. And this is, say, deeply rooted, and it's a, most of the linguists in Thailand is also female. Yeah, because language and arts and cultures are somehow related to, this being feminine. But do we have like a true male? I have to say that, I'm sorry, we have a few male young people working with us, and some of them are a bit feminine, but some of them are masculine. So, but yeah, most of the people we work with are mostly feminine. Not because of the cooking or weaving, not about these activities, but actually most of the activities related to cultures. Because I also did conducted another research project on autonomous learning. And autonomous learning is how to foster lifelong learning in the learners. And we look at the culture, and it turned out that learning language and culture is always associated with being female in the Thai society. Okay.
So the next question is from Krishna Bhattacharya. Has the language of the Black Thai been codified, or is there any such attempt?
Okay. If you talk about whether it's been modified, I have to say that language changes all the time. And this group of Black Thai people, they migrated, they moved from their original country hundreds of years ago. So things change, the way they talk kind of change. And of course, an influence on the language itself. But since, say, I work within and I'm a sociolinguist. So, and actually I consulted with different people, basically my colleagues with expertise in different fields in anthropology or linguistics. And we think that as long as the community is happy with that language, so let it be. Whether or not it's going to be modified, it doesn't have to be, because I understand that there is an argument or there are some issues in other communities where when you are doing revitalization or when you are basically teaching the language, you have to teach, say standard kind of variety, but that's not, it doesn't happen with us, because actually if you enter the field just as, not so much as a linguist, but as a friend,